Hello boys and girls, welcome to the Everbloom Mythic Plus dungeon in Season 3 of Dragonflight. And this short guide will be going through the main trash and boss mechanics that you're going to encounter inside of the dungeon. Starting with the Naturalist, you see those mobs across the dungeon and you always have to interrupt their choking vine. This turns into a channel that not only does damage to the target, but it also stuns them, potentially taking them out of the fight. You also see some cultivators surrounded by small petals. They'll try to cast Enraged Growth, which will make the small flowers around them angry, and they already have a stacking debuff on your tank, so definitely interrupt that spell and keep an eye on your tank because they can fall dead pretty easily at this point. The Rockspine Stingers are going to jump on top of players and leave a green circle around them. Everybody standing inside is taking ticking poison damage, so poison the spell is actually quite useful if you pull some of those. And then there's mini boss called Narrow Root, which you can skip, but most of the pucks fail to do so. He roots everybody at place and you can actually DPS down and kill those roots to free up the people, because if you don't, he's also casting those tornadoes that do a lot of damage to the player and also silence you while standing inside. So the TLDR here is, skip this mob if you can. If you pull it though, stack close to each other so you can DPS the roots down quickly before the tornadoes spawn and kill you. In order to unlock the first boss, you have to kill all the packs around him. They include the good old Naturalist, just to interrupt their dancing thorns, which is tank damage, and keep an eye for the healing waters casted by the Menders. As you can guess, this one is a heal and you don't want it to go off. The first boss in the dungeon is called Witherbark and you want to tank him as far away from the water as possible. Players who get marked by yellow are on top of their heads, unchecked growth. Burrows start crawling towards you from the boss, and once they reach you, they burst into a small root which blocks part of the area around the boss. In this footage we actually stack them on top of each other away from the boss, but instead you actually want to surround the boss with the roots for the purposes of Phase 2. Phase 2 starts when the boss reaches 0 energy. At that point he stops attacking you and he takes 100% increased damage. At the same time, blue orbs start walking towards the boss from the water, and if they reach him, each orb gives him back 25% energy. This phase ends once the boss reaches 100% energy, then we go back to phase 1, but if an orb hits one of the roots, it transforms into a big ad that you can just cleave down along with the boss, and he doesn't take energy back from it. You can also switch to the orbs and try to kill them manually, but that's not that efficient because they're usually far away from the boss, and you want to be damaging the boss while he's taking more damage anyway. The fight goes back and forth between phase 1 and phase 2 until you kill the boss, and in phase 1 you also have to dodge the blue circles on the ground which damage you if you stay inside, and stay behind the boss because he also has a tank fronto. Before the next boss you're going to see two new mobs. Twisted Abdomination is going to cast Noxious Eruption. It does heavy AoE damage and it leaves a nasty dot on everybody on your party, so healers be ready for that one. The mob also has a fronto and it leaves a nasty poison debuff on your tank, so plenty to heal through, especially if you don't have poison the spell. And the Berserkers are going to jump on top of somebody and start spinning it into a whirlwind. Make sure to move out of this area as quickly as possible, and keep in mind that you can also prepare stuns or knockups for them to interrupt them. But if you're not ready to move out, just a few spins can kill you on a higher keys. The second boss is trio of Ancient Protectors, 2 casters and 1 melee mob. Only one of the casters will be active at a time and they have a very important interrupt for you to do. Theo has Toxic Bloom, which stuns everybody in your party and does a lot of damage, and the rest of the time he's going to be casting Nature's Wrath. Interrupt as many of those as you can, as they do a lot of damage to your party members as well. Duhu, the melee mob, is going to charge your tank, indicated by the big green circle. You want to move that away from the other bosses because it leaves a green puddle on the ground. And after he smacks the tank, everybody in your party spawns big green circles around them as well. So make sure to move quickly away from them and keep them away from the caster mobs if you want your melee to be able to hit them. The other caster, Gola, is going to cast Revitalize. This is a big heal, so you want to make sure to interrupt that as well. And the rest of the time she's also going to be casting water bolts, damaging your party members. As I said, the two casters alternate on who is being active and casting, but you can damage the non-active caster as well, as long as you prior interrupt the important spells from the active one. They do not move throughout the fight, so you have to drag the melee mob on top of the one that you want to damage. And again, you want to keep the green puddles that go from the charge of the tank away from them so the melee can damage them. The trash before the third boss has 3 different mobs. The Ice Colors are going to cast Frost Bolts. Interrupt as many of those as you can because they hurt a lot. An uninterruptible Cold Fusion which summons orbs into a circle and they collapse towards its center. Make sure to dodge them because they do a lot of damage and they freeze you at place. The Pyromancers are going to cast Pyroblast, obviously interrupt that because it does a lot of damage, and then they have another ability called Cinderbolt Salvo. This one does heavy AoE damage shooting bolts at your teammates, make sure to have a defensive and big healing cooldowns, as it is also uninterruptible. And then you have the Arcanomancers, which are going to cast Arcane Blast, interrupt that, and they are going to shoot an orb called Spatial Disruption into the furthest player away. The orb has a travel time, make sure to move out of the impact area because it does heavy AoE damage inside of it. And to make things even better, just before the boss you have to fight a pack with all 3 of these mobs at the same time. That means you have to manage all the interrupts correctly and dodge all the freezing blows, all the arcane orbs, and do the heavy AoE healing through the fire damage. And if you haven't had enough, the boss combines all of these abilities all at the same time. Every 20 seconds the boss is going to switch to another magic school that he's going to be using, and based on the type of magic you have to deal with 2 mechanics at the same time. When she goes into a Frost Affinity, you have to dodge the collapsing ice circles while dealing with heavy fire AoE damage, and during the boss fight the firebolts leave fire patches on the ground, so you have to dodge those as well. When she goes into Arcane Affinity, you have to dodge both the collapsing ice circles on the ground and the Arcane Orb Blast area. Keeping in mind that during the boss fight, the Arcane Orb slightly pulls everybody towards the blast radius once the orb explodes, so be careful not to get pushed into an ice circle. And during the Fire Affinity, you have to dodge the fire circles on the ground, the Arcane Orb, and be careful not to get pulled into one of the fire patches left over on the ground. Remember that the orb is always cast on the player furthest away from the boss, so you can bait that and you'll know in what direction you're going to get pulled in. In between those transitions, the boss is casting spells at your tank, so be ready to heal them, and this continues until you manage to kill the boss. The area around the boss is filled with Hess Assistance, and you have to fight a pack of those before the last boss, but they don't really do much, so nothing to be scared of. The footage that I have for the last boss is actually old, the fight has been reworked and it's a little bit easier than what you're going to see. The boss has a frontal, so make sure you're standing behind it at all times because it hurts a lot, and every 55 seconds the boss is going to summon a big 3 ad. You want to kill this ad as quickly as possible because the boss is taking 300% increased damage, but the ad negates that effect, so you want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. Every now and then he's also going to cast Genesis that you see on your screen right now. He summons petals around the room, you want to run on top of them, pretty much the same as the Underworld boss. If you fail to do so, once the cast is over, the petals will become alive small ads that you have to cleave down. So that's pretty much it for the reworked version of Everbloom, one of the new Mythic Plus dungeons in Season 3 of Dragonflight. Let me know what you think about this guide, and check out my YouTube channel for guides for the rest of the dungeons in the Season 3 pool. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care, and wherever you are, be there.